I want you to picture something for a second. Think back to the absolute last massive, cross-departmental project meeting you had to sit through.
Oh, yeah. We all have one of those burned into our brains.
Right. You know the exact one I'm talking about. You're sitting there just staring at a screen of tiny, poorly lit video boxes. Or maybe you're physically trapped in one of those, like, freezing cold corporate conference rooms.
The ones where the AC is always blasting for some reason.
Exactly. And someone from the PMO pulls up a slide deck. And, of course, it has, like, 47 slides.
Minimum.
Right, minimum. The font is completely microscopic. And the Jira tickets that are being vaguely referenced in the presenter's, absolute monotone voice mean absolutely nothing to half the room.
Yeah, they're just reading serial numbers, basically.
Yeah. And as you sit there, you can just feel the sheer, palpable exhaustion just radiating from everyone. Everyone who is trying desperately to just get on the same page.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is.
Yeah.
And you look around and realize that out of the, say, 20 highly paid professionals on this call, maybe 2 are actually contributing.
Right.
The rest are just, there's synchronized swimming in corporate governance.
That is a brutally accurate way to phrase it. Synchronized swimming. I mean, it is the absolute definition of a hidden tax.
A tax, yeah. Explain that.
Well, we are so culturally conditioned to paying it that we don't even, look for it on the balance sheet anymore.
We just accept it.
Exactly. We just categorize it vaguely as doing business or project management overhead. But when you begin to actually measure the cost of human beings talking to other human beings about work.
Instead of just doing the actual work.
Right. Instead of doing the work, the financial reality is just staggering. I mean, it is a hemorrhage of capital.
And stopping that exact hemorrhage is the entire mission of our deep dive today. Because we are looking at a really fascinating stack of leaked corporate architectures today.
It's a goldmine of documents.
It really is. We've got these architectures and a soon-to-be-released fiduciary manual that are basically trying to eradicate this hidden tax completely.
Yeah, from the root up.
So specifically, we are tracking the evolution of Luigi Pascal Rondanini's work today. Now, if you follow organizational design at all, we've spent a long time, I'd say a good 10-plus deep dives over the years exploring his essay phase.
Right, the early theoretical stuff.
Yeah, we've debated his high-level theories about how companies organize themselves. But today, we are witnessing a pivot.
A very hard pivot into reality.
Exactly. We are looking at how those academic theories are crossing over into hard physical reality. We're moving from pure doctrine to practical software implementation in what Rondanini provocatively calls the post-project world.
And, I know that phrase triggers an immediate reaction for people. The post-project world, it sounds like a really aggressive claim.
I have to admit my initial reaction was extreme skepticism. Post-project. Come on. That sounds like pure Silicon Valley marketing speak to me.
Oh, for sure.
Are they honestly claiming that projects are dead? Like, nobody is going to plan a software release or, I don't know, build a bridge anymore. It feels like a provocative tagline, just designed to sell software.
It absolutely sounds like that on the surface, yeah. But when you dig into the actual architectural documents we have today, it's far more nuanced. And frankly, it's far more structural than just, canceling projects.
Okay, so what does it actually mean then?
Well, the post-project world doesn't mean the work disappears. It doesn't mean milestones disappear. What it means is that the invisible coordination tax surrounding the project...
The rituals we just described in that freezing conference room.
Exactly. Those rituals are no longer treated as an acceptable human endeavor. It means treating corporate coordination as infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Okay. Right. It's about migrating governance from human mediation people, talking to people, to encoded rules.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. It's not about the death of the project. It's about the death of the manual coordination surrounding it.
Precisely.
And to really understand how this works, we are pulling from a fascinating stack of primary sources today.
We've got quite the reading list.
We do. We are looking at the executive briefings for an enterprise platform called OrbaOS. We have the technical architecture schematics for 2 specific tools they've built to enforce this doctrine.
Right. Project Cockpit and ScenarioForge.
Yes, those 2. And crucially, we have the pre-release details for Rondanini's groundbreaking new book that serves as the theoretical bedrock for all of this.
It's the foundation of everything they're building.
But before we get into the software, we need to set the stage for you. This isn't a conversation about like productivity hacks.
No, definitely not.
We aren't going to give you tips on how to use the Pomodoro technique or keep your inbox at zero. This is about treating coordination with the exact same ruthless fiduciary discipline that a chief financial officer applies to a cash flow statement.
And to understand why a tool like OrbaOS even exists, we first have to understand the macroeconomic shift that makes it absolutely necessary right now.
Right, the environment has changed.
Exactly. Why is coordination suddenly being talked about by boards of directors and audit committees? Because for the last 50 years, it just wasn't.
It was just accepted.
Yeah, it was simply an accepted reality of middle management.
So let's unpack that economic shift, because the executive brief highlights something it calls the cost collapses.
This is a huge concept.
It really is. It argues that the fundamental components of human coordination have suddenly become dirt cheap to automate. And the numbers they throw out are just wild.
Oh, they're staggering.
They state that the cost of sensing has collapsed by 90%.
Wow.
Yeah. The cost of routing has collapsed by 95%. And the cost of rule encoding has collapsed by 85%. Let's ground this for everyone listening. What exactly do they mean by sensing, routing, and encoding in the context of a daily corporate job?
Okay, let's contextualize this because it is really the core of the entire doctrine. Historically, the only way to manage a complex enterprise was to use human brains as routers and sensors. So sensing is the act of looking at a system or a situation and identifying what is currently happening. 10 years ago, if a bank wanted to sense the status of a major software rollout, they had to hire a PMO.
A project management office.
Exactly. A human project manager would have to physically email 10 different team leads, ask them for their status, wait 3 days for a reply, and then aggregate all of that into a massive spreadsheet.
Right.
That is human sensing.
Okay, that makes sense. And routing would be like taking that spreadsheet and figuring out who needs to actually see it.
Yeah.
The project manager decides, okay, the database team is behind schedule, so I need to route this information to the director of engineering, and I need to schedule a steering committee meeting to ask for more budget. That is human routing.
Exactly. And then rule encoding is the act of writing down the logic for how a process should work.
Like documentation.
Right. It's writing a 50-page standard operating procedure document on a SharePoint site that nobody will ever read.
Oh, the classic SharePoint black hole.
Exactly. Just explain how a code change gets approved. For decades, you had to hire highly paid professionals to sense, route, and encode. But over the last few years, due to the explosion of APIs, deep software integrations, and obviously now large language models,
The landscape has changed.
drastically, the digital infrastructure to do those exact three things has become exponentially cheaper.
So today, an API can sense the status of a project by directly querying the code repository in real time.
Instantly.
An automated workflow can route the approval to the exact right director based on logic parameters.
Yep.
And an LLM can encode the business rules directly into the workflow engine. And it does this for pennies on the dollar compared to the salary of a project manager.
And here's the profound implication that Rondanini is forcing boards to realize. When digital infrastructure becomes that much cheaper than human-mediated coordination, your legacy governance models.
Meetings, the approvals.
Right. Your endless approval chains, your daily stand-ups, your steering committees, they don't just become annoying to the employees, they become an active economic liability to the shareholders.
Wow.
They become a form of structural capital inefficiency. You are burning expensive human capital on synchronization work that software infrastructure can now do almost for free.
I mean, it's the equivalent of paying a team of highly trained, six-figure accountants to sit in a room and manually add up receipts with a pencil and a legal pad when Microsoft Excel exists.
That's a great analogy.
It's not just slow, it's a massive, almost negligent misallocation of funds, which leads us directly to the core metric of this entire doctrine, the Coordination Capital Ratio, or CCR.
Yes, the CCR.
The sources define CCR as the percentage of your total labor cost that is spent entirely on human-mediated coordination.
And the doctrine breaks the CCR down into three very distinct tiers, and this acts as a brutal diagnostic tool for executives.
Okay, let's hear them.
So if your company's CCR is under 15%, you are in what they call the infrastructure leveraged tier. That is the absolute gold standard. It means your software systems are handling the heavy lifting of synchronization, and your human beings are spending 85% of their time doing actual judgment, creative problem solving, and execution work.
That sounds like a dream. Then you have the middle tier, right? Which is a CCR of 15 to 25%.
Right.
They categorize this as coordination loaded. You're carrying some excess weight, things are a bit sluggish. You probably have a few too many recurring calendar invites, but the company is still moving forward. You're surviving.
But then you hit the danger zone.
Oh, boy.
If your CCR creeps up to between 25 and 35%, your organization is classified as coordination-bound or coordination-constrained.
Constrained.
This is where the sheer suffocating weight of synchronization is actually choking your operating leverage. And there's a critical warning in the documents about this specific state. AI investments in a coordination-bound company will drastically underperform.
Wait, really? I would think a company drowning in coordination would benefit the absolute most from AI. Why would the investment underperform?
It's a great question. It's because the human routing is still the dominant control mechanism.
Oh, I see.
You can give an engineering team the most advanced, expensive AI coding assistants in the world, allowing them to write code 10 times faster. But if that code still requires them to sit in 3 weeks of manual steering committees to get an approval from the architecture board...
The speed doesn't matter.
Exactly. The overall velocity of the company remains zero. You just hurried up to wait. The AI optimized the execution, but the coordination bottleneck negated all the gains.
That makes perfect sense. The bottleneck just moved from the keyboard to the conference room.
Precisely.
Let's make this incredibly real with the mathematical example they provide in the executive brief, because this is where the aha moment really hit me and where the fiduciary aspect becomes undeniable.
The math is very sobering.
It is. They walk through a hypothetical scenario of a mid-sized enterprise with 1,000 employees. Let's say the fully loaded cost per employee, so that's salary, benefits, taxes, real estate, is $120,000 a year.
Pretty standard.
Right. That gives you a total annual labor cost of $120 million. Now, if that company is sitting in the danger zone, let's say a 35% CCR, that means they are spending $42 million a year purely on human-mediated coordination.
Just let that number hang there for a second.
$42 million just for people to talk to other people about the work they were planning to do or the work they just finished doing.
$42 million. I want that to sink in for everyone listening. That is not money spent on product development.
Nope.
That is not money spent on marketing or sales or customer support. That is pure synchronization overhead.
Right. But if a CFO applies this doctrine, if they actively migrate that governance from human rituals to software infrastructure and manage to reduce that CTR from 35% down to, say, 22%.
Which is very achievable.
Yeah, just moving from the constrained tier to just the loaded tier, the math changes drastically. At 22%, your coordination cost drops to $26.4 million.
Right.
The difference there. You have just released $15.6 million of capital annually.
And that is pure capital release. It goes straight to the bottom line.
Amazing.
If you look at a company with, say, $500 million in annual revenue, taking just half of that saved $15.6 million and dropping it to the bottom line could improve their operating margin from 8.0% to 9.56%.
Wow.
A 150 basis point improvement. That is a massive structural win, and it requires absolutely zero changes to the actual product they are selling.
You don't have to sell a single extra widget.
Exactly.
Right.
It requires no new sales territories. It is purely achieved by unclogging the internal organization.
Unclogging is the perfect word. Honestly, the analogy I couldn't stop thinking about while reading these briefs is corporate cholesterol.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I really think of a company's CCR as its cholesterol level. You need some cholesterol for your human body to function. Like a biological cell literally cannot build its membrane without it.
Sure.
Similarly, you need some human coordination in the company. You need leadership. You need strategic alignment. You need human empathy in management.
You can't automate everything.
Right. But if you cross that 35% threshold, the arteries of the company just clog up. Decision velocity slows to an absolute crawl, and the whole system faces this severe structural risk of a corporate heart attack. You just can't pump the actual work through the system anymore.
That is a highly accurate framing.
Yeah.
And because it's a structural risk, it requires a structural doctrine to treat it, which is exactly why Rondanini is no longer just writing theoretical thought pieces on blogs.
Right. He's gone full fiduciary.
He has formalized this entirely into a rigorous governance specification.
Yes, so let's talk about the fiduciary manual itself. The foundation of all this theory is being published as the Coordination Capital Doctrine.
the big release.
We've got the official release details right here in the sources. The global publication date is locked in for the 7th of July, 2026.
Coming up soon.
Yep. For any procurement officers or corporate librarians listening who need to officially log into their purchasing systems, the ISBN is 978-1901-977145.
And it is absolutely critical to note how they are positioning this book in the market. They state very clearly, almost aggressively, this is not a management methodology.
It's a self-help book.
No, you won't find this next to books about finding your leadership voice or agile team building at the airport. It is a governance doctrine designed specifically for institutions where capital discipline is a legal fiduciary obligation.
Like regulated financial services, healthcare, aerospace.
Exactly. It is written explicitly for chief financial officers, chief audit executives, and risk committee chairs.
Exactly. It's about compliance and capital. If you want to get your hands on it, Rondanini Publishing is doing a direct pre-sale right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you can get the hardback edition directly through their site via a secure Stripe checkout. It's £50 direct, plus £15 for international shipping. They are also rolling it out through all the major traditional retail channels, Amazon UK, Brown's Books, Foyles, Waterstones, Barnes & Noble on that July 7th date. And retail price there is £55.
It is a major, coordinated global release designed to hit the desks of executives all at once.
But a book, no matter how rigorous, is still just theory on paper. The true innovation here is how they bridge the gap between reading about CCR and actually managing it.
Which brings up the multi-million-dollar question, really. We have the doctrine, we have the math showing us that corporate cholesterol is killing our operating margins. But how does a board of directors or an audit committee actually measure this in real time?
Right.
You can't just send out a subjective survey asking your engineers, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you feel like you have too many meetings?
Everyone will just say yes.
Exactly. That's not fiduciary data, that's a sentiment poll. How do you rigorously measure the invisible drag of coordination?
This is where theory becomes a tangible, deployable tool. To solve the measurement problem, OrbaOS built their first major software implementation, OrbaOS Instruments. Yeah. It is essentially the diagnostic machine you put the corporate patient inside to measure the cholesterol.
The technical documentation details a very specific process for this. It starts with what they call the 30-item diagnostic.
Okay.
But again, this isn't a questionnaire. The software runs a behavior-anchored diagnostic across areas that are deeply structurally embedded in corporate reality.
So it's looking at actual data.
Exactly. It looks at metrics like decision friction, approval latency, information fragmentation, dependency density, and rework.
Let's define some of these for the audience. The documentation lists outputs like RSI and CDI. What are we actually talking about here?
These acronyms are the new vital signs for a company. RSI stands for Resource Strain Index, which measures the operational stress on your teams.
Like context switching.
Exactly. Are people constantly context switching? Are they bogged down in overlapping dependencies? Then you have CDI, which stands for Coordination Drag Indicator.
How does that measure?
This measures your governance translation, essentially. How long does it take for a strategic decision at the top to translate into actual engineering execution at the bottom, and how much coordination effort is burned during that translation?
And the beauty of this is that it's anchored in observable data.
Right.
Approval latency isn't a feeling. It is the measurable timestamp difference between when an engineer requests a deployment in the system and when a manager clicks the approve button.
That's hard math.
Exactly. Information fragmentation isn't an emotion. It is the measurable reality of having a single software requirement spread across a Jira ticket, a massive Word document, and a scattered Slack thread simultaneously. By hooking into the actual tools where work happens, OrbaOS Instruments removes the subjectivity completely.
And based on these behavior-anchored metrics, the system calculates something called your structural floor.
Oh, I found this part fascinating.
It's a great concept for risk managers. The structural floor is the absolute minimum amount of coordination a company actually needs to exist without breaching its own constraints.
Constraints like what?
Such as legal regulatory obligations or basic operational stability.
I love that concept.
Yeah.
It's basically telling the board, yes, you can cut the fat, you can eliminate meetings, but if you cut below this mathematical floor, you start cutting into the bone.
Right. You go too far.
Yeah. You risk a compliance failure or a major system outage because you've removed necessary oversight.
Exactly. It provides a safe target for reduction. But the most interesting part of OrbaOS Instruments isn't just what it measures, it's how it processes that highly sensitive data.
The architecture.
Right. If we look at the architecture, it is incredibly clever, especially considering the regulated industries they are targeting. They describe the architecture as two systems, one brain.
Okay, let's break that down because this is where the enterprise engineering gets really elegant.
It really does.
The first system is OrbaOS Instruments itself. They affectionately call this the boardroom and the filing cabinet.
Nice name.
Yeah. This is the actual platform where human beings log in via their browser. It's where you enter your organizational parameters, keep your history, and set your access controls.
It's the interface.
Exactly. If your company runs a diagnostic, the historical results live here. If you are tracking your coordination drift over a 6-month period, that baseline is safely stored here. It handles the evidence data room, and it produces the final, polished PDF reports that you actually hand to the board of directors. As the documentation proudly states, it remembers everything.
But then you have the second system, which is called OrbaOS IntApp.
IntApp.
Yeah, and they refer to this as the analyst in the room. This, the actual intelligence engine. When you upload all your raw evidence, let's say a massive zip file of a project's history, log exports, and communication metadata instruments, passes it to IntApp.
Okay.
The engine reads the evidence, runs the deterministic CCR diagnostic, calculates your RSI and CDI, and interprets the results against the rules of the doctrine.
Wait, hold on. I have to push back heavily.
Okay, what's the issue?
I read the technical brief, and it highlights a very specific, almost bizarre feature of this engine. It says OrbaOS IntApp is stateless.
Yes, it is.
It calculates the score, passes the result back to the instruments platform, and then it instantly, completely forgets everything it just read. It stores absolutely nothing in memory or on disk.
That's correct.
Now, a stateless AI in 2026.
How does that make any sense?
We are living in the age of persistent learning models.
Sure.
The whole point of modern software is that it learns your specific corporate context over time. If the analyst engine immediately gets amnesia after every single task, how does the platform actually build a baseline? Doesn't it have to reread the entire company's history every single time someone logs in?
I completely understand your skepticism on that. In a consumer application, a stateless AI would be terrible. It'd be super annoying.
Right.
But this is an enterprise application, and your question touches on the fundamental reality of enterprise risk management. The genius of the architecture is the strict separation of duties.
It's separation of duties, okay.
Think about the latency versus security trade-off. Yes, the engine has to process data fresh each time it's invoked, which requires computational power and time. But the platform instruments keeps your history, your audit trail, and your longitudinal progress.
Ah, so the data is saved, just not in the AI engine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That historical data never leaves your control. But keeping the engine IntApp stateless is a massive, non-negotiable security feature for a bank. It ensures that a single, universally updated methodology can serve hundreds of different clients without their highly sensitive corporate data ever mixing in a central learning brain.
I see. So if I am a global bank and my fiercest competitor is also using OrbaOS, I don't have to worry that the engine is going to accidentally learn from my trading platform's approval latency data.
No cross-contamination.
Right, and somehow leak that structural insight to my competitor in a hallucination. Because the engine quite literally cannot remember my data once the session ends.
Precisely. The doctrine, the rules, and the scoring logic live in the engine. When Rondanini and his team update the methodology, the engine gets smarter about how to measure.
But not what it measured.
Right. It applies that smartness to your data only in the exact moment of analysis, in volatile memory, and then wipes the slate clean. It is the only way a highly regulated institution, paranoid about data leakage, would ever allow an external diagnostic tool to read their raw, unvarnished project evidence.
Which perfectly explains their deployment modularity.
Yes, the deployment options are key here.
Because even with a stateless engine, regulated enterprises have vastly different risk appetites. The sources show that OrbaOS can be deployed in 3 distinct ways. First, there's the standard cloud version hosted by OrbaOS, which is great for most normal, non-regulated teams. Everything is in the browser, data is isolated per organization, standard sauce stuff.
But then you have the self-hosted server option, and this is critical.
Let's explain that.
For those outside the IT infrastructure world, this is delivered as a Docker container bundle. Docker is basically a standardized package of software that contains everything needed to run the application independently.
It's like a software box.
Exactly. A bank can take this Docker bundle and install it entirely inside their own network. The platform, the engine, the database, it all sits safely behind the enterprise firewall. For highly secure, air-gapped environments, the data literally never touches the public internet.
That is robust. And then there's the desktop app. I found this wild.
Oh, the desktop app is fascinating.
It's just the IntApp engine, living as an application on a single operator's Windows or Mac OS machine. You can run diagnoses completely offline.
Totally air-gapped.
Yeah. A compliance officer could take a laptop onto a secure floor, point the desktop app at a local folder of evidence, generate the report, and leave. The exact same analytical brain, just packaged for varying levels of absolute corporate paranoia.
It demonstrates a profound understanding of their target market. They aren't selling to agile startups who happily put all their IP in a public cloud.
No.
They are selling to compliance officers who view external software vendors as massive security liabilities.
Okay, so OrbaOS Instruments allows the board to measure the corporate cholesterol, to establish the structural floor, and to track the CCR over time. That is fantastic at the macro boardroom level.
It's the high-level view.
But measurement is only half the battle. Once the board sees the CCR, the engineers are still stuck in the trenches. The actual work of a company doesn't happen in a polished PDF report.
Definitely not.
It happens in Jira backlogs, in daily stand-ups, and in project steering committees. How does this doctrine survive contact with the actual development cycle?
This is where it gets real.
Right. This brings us to the second part of the OrbaOS suite, Project Cockpit and the actual daily implementation of the post-project world.
This is where the rubber meets the road. If Instruments is the thermometer diagnosing the fever, Project Cockpit is the surgical tool removing the infection.
Nice analogy. Thanks.
But before we dive into the software itself, let's look at how they integrate with existing tools.
The documentation is adamant about one thing. Project Cockpit is not a Jira replacement. Nobody's asking you to migrate off Jira. Jira remains the ultimate system of record.
Which is a relief for every IT department, let's hear.
Seriously. No, I used to think of Jira as a massive warehouse full of boxes, but honestly, that's too simple of an analogy for an audience that understands enterprise architecture.
How do you see it now?
Jira is more like a massive, highly structured relational database. It holds every single task, bug, and user story perfectly. It's an incredible database, but it completely lacks an executive presentation layer. It's very hard for a CEO to look at a Jira board with 10,000 tickets and understand the true state of the business.
That is the perfect way to describe it. Jira is the database. Project Cockpit is the boardroom presentation layer sitting directly on top of it.
Right.
It acts as the oversight layer, translating thousands of tickets into governed fiduciary realities.
And the way Project Cockpit populates that view is fascinating. The sources provide a walkthrough of the standard OrbaOS demo import pack, which really illustrates the power of this tool.
Walk us through the demo.
So they take what they call a BRD-shaped workbook, a business requirements document. In the old world, a PM would spend weeks manually creating tickets from this Excel file. In the demo, this file has 7 epics and 14 user stories across complex work streams like change management, accounting, IT, and pre-internal audit.
That's a lot of manual data entry normally.
Instead of human manual entry, Cockpit runs a 2-phase CSV import. It injects the epics and stories cleanly into Jira via API. It instantly sets up the necessary structure in the database.
Wow.
And then once that data is structurally sound in Jira, Cockpit generates these incredible dashboards that Jira simply cannot provide natively out of the box.
And the documentation mentions it implements G0 to G6 stage gates directly into the view. Let's unpack that for the non-PMO listeners. What are we looking at there?
Sure. A stage gate process is a classic governance model. G0 is typically project ideation. G1 is requirements gathering. G2 is design, G3 is build, G4 is testing, G5 is deployment, and G6 is the post-implementation review.
Pretty standard life cycle.
Right. Usually managing these gates requires massive PowerPoint decks and formal committee meetings where someone literally asks, are we ready to pass gate 3?
And everyone nods awkwardly.
Exactly. Cockpit encodes these gates directly into the dashboard. It looks at the Jira data, sees that all required testing tickets are marked done, and autonomously signals that the gate is passed. No meeting required.
And it doesn't stop there. It provides executive dashboards, vendor views, and crucially, SOX testing compliance dashboards.
Oh, SOX compliance.
Yeah, SOX refers to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which mandates strict financial reporting and auditing controls for public companies. An auditor needs to know that a change to a financial system was tested properly. Cockpit surfaces that compliance data instantly.
Oh, that's huge for auditors.
And all of this is rendered inside the Project Cockpit app based on the Jira data. It's not a clunky third-party gadget bolted onto Jira. It is a dedicated, distraction-free boardroom interface.
But I have to say, my absolute favorite feature of Project Cockpit is something they call meeting coordination accounting.
This is the doctrine made manifest in code.
Truly. Let's say a project manager looks at the cockpit dashboard, sees that everything is perfectly on track, and decides to cancel a 1-hour weekly status meeting that has 10 senior engineers invited.
A miracle.
Right. Usually everyone just rejoices that they got an hour of their day back. It's seen as a minor calendar win. But Project Cockpit actually tracks that canceled meeting mathematically. It logs it as measurable coordination capital freed.
It doesn't just log it as an hour, it monetizes it.
Exactly.
How does it do that?
The architecture shows it hooks into the calendar API like Microsoft Exchange or Google Workspace. It looks at the attendee list of the canceled meeting. It cross-references those attendees against anonymized HR salary bands.
Brilliant.
And it spits out the exact dollar amount of capital freed by canceling that status meeting. It translates an hour of 10 people's time into actual thousands of dollars saved and added back to the operational capacity of the company. It makes the invisible, ignored cost of meetings brutally visible to leadership.
It forces the organization to realize that a meeting is a capital expenditure. You are spending actual money to synchronize. If the cockpit dashboards provide the synchronization autonomously and asynchronously, you don't need to spend that capital. You can reinvest it in execution.
But even with a perfect high-level presentation layer from the cockpit tracking everything, the project eventually hits a wall.
It always does.
You can have the best dashboards in the world and cancel all the status meetings. But if the work itself hits a bottleneck, velocity still drops to zero. And the OrbaOS team identified a very specific, incredibly painful bottleneck in enterprise delivery.
And it's not what people think it is.
No, it's not the coding phase. It's not even running the automated tests. It is the agonizing slow lane of QAI test design.
This is a critical distinction that most people outside of software engineering completely miss. The industry has spent the last decade obsessed with test execution.
Right, running the tests.
We have incredible tools that can run thousands of tests in seconds. But as the OrbaOS positioning insightfully points out, by the time a ticket is groomed and ready, the software engineer is already typing code. The QA lead, meanwhile, is still sitting there translating the overdraft logic changed into 80 distinct scenarios, 30 edge cases, and a massive Confluence page no one will ever read.
Oh, man. Every single QA engineer listening just groaned in physical pain. It's so universally true. The execution is fast, but the cognitive translation of business logic into testable steps is painstakingly, agonizingly manual.
It's pure brain drain.
Let's look at the specific demo data they provide to illustrate this. In Phase 2 of their standard project import, under just 14 user stories, the system naturally dictates the creation of 28 manual test scenario preparation subtasks. Think about that ratio. That is a massive amount of human capital being burned on coordination, writing, and translation before a single test is actually run.
This is pure coordination load. It is human beings acting as the translation layer between a vague business requirement and a rigid technical execution protocol. And this is exactly the problem that their next tool, ScenarioForge, was built to completely eliminate.
ScenarioForge. This is where the tech gets really sci-fi, but in a very grounded, practical enterprise way. ScenarioForge is an AI tool that integrates directly with Project Cockpit, but also with almost every other major issue tracker on the market. Jira, Linear, Azure DevOps, GitLab, GitHub, UTrack.
It plays nice with everything.
Its entire job is to compress that test design bottleneck using large language models.
The workflow they've built for this is elegantly structured into a 4-step pipeline. Step 1 is ingest. ScenarioForge connects to your track, let's use Jira as the example, and pulls the target ticket in via API. It reads the business requirement, the acceptance criteria, the parent epics, and any attached specification documents to understand the full context.
Step 2 is generate. This is where the AI takes over the heavy lifting. It researches the system context, and then generates a prioritized, comprehensive bundle of test scenarios. We're talking positive paths, negative paths, compliance edge cases, race conditions.
The whole 9 yards.
And it doesn't just write the scenarios in a vacuum. It generates an RTM stub. I need to pause here because the RTM is crucial for auditors. RTM stands for Requirement Traceability Matrix. Why is that so important?
Traceability is the backbone of compliance. An auditor doesn't just want to see that you ran a test. They want to see a direct, unbroken mathematical link between the specific test you ran and the original business requirement that dictated it.
The proof.
Exactly. The RTM proves that every requirement was tested, and every test serves a requirement. By generating the RTM stub automatically, ScenarioForge eliminates days of manual spreadsheet wrapping for the QA team.
Incredible. Now, step 3 is review. And we absolutely cannot emphasize this enough because it speaks to their understanding of risk. ScenarioForge is not an unmanned, autonomous AI running wild in your Jira instance.
No, that would be terrifying.
It is strictly a human-in-the-loop system. The generated scenarios land in a secure review console. A human QA lead must physically look at them, triage them, edit them if necessary, and explicitly click a button to approve each test scenario.
They're the final gatekeeper.
Yes. They can see a visual diff against the original ticket. Nothing moves forward, nothing is written to the database without human authorization.
Which leads to step 4. Publish. Once approved by the human, ScenarioForge pushes the structured data back to your tracker. If you're using Jira, it pushes it back not as a messy comment, but as a beautiful structured hierarchy. Epic, linking to story, linking to one individual distinct task per test scenario.
Clean data.
It also publishes the necessary documentation straight to Confluence, and crucially, it is entirely idempotent.
Idempotent. Another great piece of engineering jargon. Let's define it for everyone. It means you can perform the same action multiple times, and the result will be exactly the same, without causing unintended duplication.
Right.
If the business requirement changes, you can run ScenarioForge again, and it will update the existing tickets rather than creating a massive, confusing duplicate set of tickets.
And they even detail a Phase 3 extension to this pipeline. Once the high-level scenarios are approved, ScenarioForge can generate the actual executable step-by-step manual test cases underneath them.
Oh, that's handy.
Or if a bank has a massive, dusty archive of legacy test scripts trapped in old Excel or CSV files, they can import them into ScenarioForge. The AI will read the legacy rows, map them to the newly generated scenarios, and publish them cleanly into Jira, effectively modernizing their entire QA archive in minutes.
Okay, I have to ask the obvious question here and play the skeptic again.
Go for it.
The tech industry is absolutely flooded with automated testing tools right now. Cypress, Playwright, Tricentis, Functionize, there are hundreds of them. Why is OrbaOS focusing solely on the design and writing phase? Why not build another execution engine that actually runs the code?
Because, as we touched on earlier, execution isn't the problem anymore. Running an automated script in Cypress takes milliseconds. The bottleneck isn't the machine executing the code. The bottleneck is the human mind translating the intent.
Translating the intent.
It's translating a complex, ambiguous human business logic like, ensure the overdraft penalty applies only if the account is delinquent for 30 days unless it's a premium tier account, into a rigorous traceable suite of 80 discrete edge cases is an intensely difficult cognitive task.
It really is.
It requires understanding regulatory constraints, historical system context, and technical architecture. That is the true human labor bottleneck. By applying AI specifically to the design phase, OrbaOS is freeing up highly skilled QA engineers from acting as expensive stenographers, allowing them to focus on risk analysis and outcome stewardship.
It's literally reallocating human capital from synchronization to judgment, which is exactly what the Coordination Capital Doctrine preaches.
Exactly.
But this brings us to the massive, glowing red elephant in the room.
Uh-oh. The security elephant.
Yes. We've just spent 10 minutes talking about how powerful this AI is at reading proprietary system architectures and generating test scenarios based on core business logic. If I am an IT director at a global bank, and I suggest taking the highly sensitive proprietary business logic of our new algorithmic trading platform and sending it via API to a public SaaS AI model like ChatGPT.
You're fired.
I am getting fired on the spot.
Well,
It is an absolute non-starter. My compliance officer would have a heart attack.
And rightly so. Sending unredacted corporate IP to a public multi-tenant LLM that might use your data to train future models is a catastrophic security breach.
Which brings us to the strict enterprise constraints that dictate how software is actually bought and deployed in these environments. A global bank has absolute deal breakers, strict data residency requirements, SOC 2 compliance demands, and a visceral fear of vendor lock-in.
Yep.
And OrbaOS has seemingly built their entire business model around solving for these exact constraints.
Let's talk about BOS, because this is where OrbaOS separates itself from 99% of the AI startups in the market today. BOS stands for Bring Your Own Key. The OrbaOS model is completely different from a standard AI wrapper. They state unequivocally in their architecture documents, we do not proxy prompts. There is zero vendor token margin.
Okay, let's explain what a token margin is so everyone grasps why this is a big deal. Usually when you buy a fancy new AI tool, you type your prompt into their shiny interface.
Right.
They take your prompt, send it to OpenAI or Anthropic through their own servers using their API keys, and then they charge you a markup on the computational cost. If OpenAI charges them a penny for the tokens, they charge you 5 cents. They sit in the middle and collect a margin on every single word generated.
But OrbaOS refuses to sit in the middle. The enterprise brings its own ATI key for the LLM they have already vetted, contracted with, and secured.
Any LLM.
Pretty much. It could be OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, AWS Bedrock, Anthropic, Gemini. Or, crucially, it could be a completely private, self-hosted open source model running on something like VLLM, which is a high-throughput engine for serving open source models internally.
Wow.
The data goes straight from the enterprise's secure virtual private cloud, their VPC, directly to their chosen provider. OrbaOS never sees the prompt, they never see the generated code, and they don't make a single cent off the AI computational usage.
From a security and procurement standpoint, this changes everything. The LLM credential lives securely in the client's own container. The token spend hits the client's existing provider count.
It's so clean.
If a bank has already spent 6 grueling months getting an Azure OpenAI instance cleared by their InfoSec team, they don't have to start over. They can just plug that cleared Azure key directly into ScenarioForge and start generating tests immediately. Furthermore, because ScenarioForge can be natively self-hosted via Docker or Helm, Helm being a package manager for Kubernetes, allowing for massive internal deployments, an enterprise can pair ScenarioForge with the local LLM and run the entire system completely air-gapped.
No internet required.
No outbound internet connection required whatsoever. The data never leaves the building.
It provides the ultimate peace of mind. But peace of mind isn't enough for an auditor. They need proof.
Right, the receipts.
And OrbaOS backs up this architecture with intense, rigorous auditability. We talked about the human-in-the-loop review process, but the system goes much deeper to generate concrete proof of everything that happens. Every single action ingest, generate, review, push, login is meticulously recorded.
The technical specs show they export this as structured JSON records, specifically a manifest.jsonl and a writelog.json, along with those requirement traceability matrix CSVs we talked about. JSON just means JSON lines. It's a format that's incredibly easy for data pipelines and log analyzers to ingest and parse.
So when the IT General Controls auditor shows up 6 months later, looks at a critical test script and asks, how exactly did this test scenario get created? You don't just shrug your shoulders and say, I don't know, the AI model hallucinated it and we ran it.
No, you have the proof.
You hand them the manifest. The manifest shows exactly what business requirement the AI read, the exact prompt that was used, what it generated, which specific human QA lead explicitly clicked the approve button at 2:04 p.m. on a Tuesday, and exactly how it was pushed to Jira via API. You maintain an unbroken, cryptographically verifiable chain of evidence.
This is exactly why OrbaOS positions this as a governance tool first and an AI tool second. In regulated environments, encoded rules and traceable logs are vastly superior to meeting minutes and informal Slack approvals.
Absolutely.
And they've packaged this architecture in a way that is highly attractive, not just to direct enterprises, but to external consultancies as well. The deployment tiers are fascinating. They have a multi-tenant studio tier that is designed specifically for QA consultancies and agencies.
The consultancy pattern is brilliant. A consulting firm can spin up a single studio install of ScenarioForge, white label it with their own branding, and then carve out completely isolated environments called tenants for up to 10 different clients on a single server.
Right. So Tenant A is a major bank using their own lockdown Azure key and pushing to their secure Jira instance. Tenant B is a healthcare provider using their own HIPAA-compliant Anthropic key and pushing to linear.
Perfect isolation.
And because of the strict tenant isolation, nothing leaks across the divider. The consultancy gets to supercharge their test design services, vastly increasing their margins without ever mixing client data. And as a brilliant little cherry on top of their go-to-market strategy, they have this founder offer detailed in the pricing sheet.
Oh, the book offer.
Yeah. Every paid plan after the initial 14-day trial automatically includes a free physical hardcover copy of the Coordination Capital Doctrine book mailed directly to the user. It really physically ties the software back to the philosophy.
It grounds the technology in the fiduciary reality. But I want to circle back to an observation about their business strategy, specifically regarding the BYO model.
Sure.
OrbaOS is deliberately leaving a massive amount of money on the table by refusing to proxy prompts and collect a token margin. In the SaaS world, that recurring usage-based revenue is usually the holy grail. It's what drives unicorn valuations. Why would a tech company walk away from it?
It feels almost counterintuitive, right, for a tech company to say, no, please, don't pay us for the AI usage. But the more I look at the sources and the realities of enterprise procurement, the more I realize it is a calculated masterstroke. By abandoning the token margin, they are buying something vastly more valuable in the enterprise space. Absolute trust.
Exactly. In a regulated enterprise, trust, security compliance, and auditability are worth infinitely more than a SaaS microtransaction margin. If OrbaOS sat in the middle and proxied the data, every single bank would have to put them through a brutal, year-long third-party risk assessment. They would have to audit OrbaOS data centers, their employee background checks, their SOC2 reports, everything.
A nightmare.
By stepping completely out of the data path, they bypass 90% of that friction. They sell an annual license for the software infrastructure, and the client retains total, uncompromised sovereignty over their data and their AI spend. It is a pure infrastructure play, not a usage play.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap this incredible journey we've been on today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started with the theory. Luigi Pascal Rondanini identified that the economic cost of routing, sensing, and encoding has structurally collapsed, making traditional human-mediated meetings, slide decks, and manual approvals a toxic, measurable drag on corporate operating margins.
That theory has now been formalized into the Coordination Capital Doctrine, a rigorous governance framework aimed at CFOs and audit committees, culminating in a hardcover book release on July 7, 2026.
But theory isn't enough to change behavior. So OrbaOS built the measurement instrument. OrbaOS Instruments, with its ingenious stateless engine architecture, allowing boards to accurately diagnose their coordination capital ratio, identify their structural floor, and measure the hidden tax without risking data leakage.
And finally, they built the implementation layer for the engineers in the trenches. Project Cockpit to turn Jira from a massive database into an executive boardroom, actively quantifying meeting coordination as freed capital.
And ScenarioForge to compress the agonizing slow lane of QA test design using highly secure, BYOK, human-in-the-loop AI.
The ultimate takeaway here is profound. The post-project world does not mean that projects magically disappear tomorrow. It means that the expensive, invisible, soul-crushing coordination tax that surrounds them is finally being measured, governed, and automated into silent infrastructure.
It is fundamentally about reallocating human effort from synchronization to execution. It's freeing people to do the work they were actually hired to do.
That's the dream.
And that leads me to a final, slightly provocative thought I want to leave you with today. If you are listening to this and you managed a team or a department, think about your day-to-day existence.
Think about your calendar.
Right. If OrbaOS successfully turns meeting coordination, dashboard generation, test design, and project oversight into silent, automated software infrastructure, what is the core purpose of a human manager in this post-project world? Think back to that massive, exhausting cross-departmental meeting we pictured at the start of the deep dive.
The one with the tiny video boxes.
Yeah. If you strip away all that coordination theater, all the slide decks, and the performative status updates, are you ready to be judged purely on the quality of your actual judgment?
That is the real existential challenge of the post-project world for middle management.
Something to mull over before you join your next stand-up.